Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Jefferson Howe, and it's another Tech Monday or Tech Sharing Tuesday. And it's already like what day it is? Like 10 days to go before Christmas. So advance Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to everyone. And uh, and in this topic before Christmas is I want to talk about data residency uh, and how you handle data residency in your CIM platform. So as you can see, in every country, there's a lot of different data localization rules, sovereignty rules, and this is just more of like how you as an organization are able to adopt and conform and be compliant on the different data regularization or data localization rules that adhere in your country. So I'm living in Australia, so we have a Privacy Act, right? In the US, there's uh, CCPA. In Europe, there's GDPR. So different countries, different way, different form. And the challenge there is that it's hard now to understand everything, what can be stored, what can't be stored, and also how would you manage data. So in this text sharing Monday or Tuesday session, I'm gonna talk about like what are the platforms available that can help you handle data residency in your CIAM or CIM platform. So let's do some background or context or some role playing. So I have a fictitious company called Acme. So Acme is a global company which serves around US, EMEA, APAC, and MENA. So as you can see, it's a globally owned company wherein it operates around the world. Second, Acme stores and manages customer sensitive data. So when I mean sensitive data, this could be personal identifiable information or PII. This could range from your first name, your last name, your mobile number, your address, or it could be your tax file number or any attribute that's deemed to be sensitive. Acme needs to adhere to local industry regulations. Hence, they are looking to adhere a solution that can address data privacy and sovereignty. So this is the part wherein I'm talking about what solutions out there can actually help us within our CIM platform to handle this. And Acme currently leverages a mixture of SaaS, cloud-based, and on-premise based platforms. So they're very modern. They work with the latest and greatest technology. So they work with all types and forms of applications or platforms. So what solutions are out there, right? So there's a there's some in Okta. There's a data stealth integration, wherein this is more of us partnering with Data Stealth, and Okta as your CIAM platform can actually use Data Stealth to do redaction or masking as part of that pre-built integration between the two vendors. And then there are other vendors like InCountry and Big ID as well. Big ID is more of like an aggregation of data, trying to understand your data, and basically from there pinpoint what are the data that are deemed to be affected or affecting any compliance regulations or locally data localization issues or regulations that needs to be refined or tuned as part of the discovery process. And lastly, there's an in-country. In-country is basically a pure SaaS platform that handles data storage in a data residency format, wherein they provide a platform where you can call the platform via APIs, SDKs, and they're able to store data based on a certain country you decide them to store with. I understand with in-country, they're actually partnering with different vendors like Salesforce, Twilio, Mambu, wherein the integration, rather than having it to be done programmatically, it can be done as part of the product capability, so as out of the box, right? So it's like what DataCell and Okta already has. So it's something like in-country is also trying to partner with many vendors as it can. But in this section or this tech sharing Monday or Tuesday, we're going to talk about in-country because I've used them, tried them, and I found them as a great solution, especially if you want to store data in a specific country, such that you can adhere to data localization, sovereignty, and compliance rules. So how does the solution look like, right? So let's talk about high-level solution architecture now. So high-level solution architecture is is about your application, whether it's a SaaS built application or something you in-house grew or custom built, what you're trying to do is that for any regulated data, you want to store it in country. Such regulated data is what I said earlier, PII. This could be your first name, last name, tax file number, anything that's deemed to be PII or classified as PII within the country that you're operating. Health records, we already know that. Payment information, this could be like anything related to credit card or anything that's like a tax file numbers, and transaction history that could connect that history or that transaction back to the end user. And lastly, for all unregulated data, let's just keep them inside your platform or database, or in this part, Okta. Right? So a good example would be if you're just storing usernames, emails, then they could just live in the CIAM platform. But any PII data like first name, last name, mobile number, address, tax file number, any data sovereignty attribute can be stored in country. So this is what I'm going to demo. But I said to you earlier, in-country supports a pre-built native integration with some of their SaaS vendors like Salesforce, Mambu, ServiceNow, Twilio, Segment, wherein it's more driven through that pre-built integration that they built between these vendors. And from there, they're able to do that natively using the APIs in the background. But in this Tech Sharing Mondays and Tuesdays, we're going to make it funky, right? Because we want to show how flexible it is to connect with in-country, whether if it's not, if it's pre-built or not pre-built. So how can this be achieved with Okta? So given Okta is a CIAM platform we're going to use, how can we actually use or leverage in country is through the capability that Okta that provided, which is called the extensibility capability through the format of webhooks. The good thing with Okta, the webhooks can lapse from different areas. One is event hooks, meaning that every time a user gets created in the backend, then that user will generate a create user event. And we can use Okta workflows as an orchestration tool such that it can call the third-party API that I'm built, which is using the in-country SDK to redact data. So that's why I'm reducting the data as part of the process. Then to unreduct the data, or to reverse the reduction, I'm using inline hooks during authentication such that I can unmask, unhash those data such that it can now be displayable or readable for the user, as long as the user is, let's say, accessing that data within the regulated country that he or she is allowed to. And what's the future ask of this tech sharing Monday or Tuesday session, right? So if this can be productized later on as part of the pre-built integration between Okta and providers like InCountry, then this will allow vendors like InCountry and Okta to solve data localization regularization laws requirements, and it's no longer companies or organizations no longer required to build them from ground up, right? So rather than talking much about it, let's actually do the demo, because that's where all the fun part begins. So to do the demo, first thing you'll do is you need to sign up an account in InCountry. So here, as you can see, you go to portal.incountry.com, then you can click login. Then you can sign up for a free account. I already have signed up, so I'm just going to sign in. So here, I'm going to log in with my account, with my password. And the good thing with InCountry is that they also support 2FA using their 6-digit OTP. So you can enroll that on Okta Verify. Then from there, you can use Okta Verify for the OTP. So let's go here, where I'm just typing the OTP. Then I'm going to submit that. So first thing you'll see in country is the dashboard. So I'm currently at a trial. As you can see, I already have played around where I stored data US. I stored data in different areas in the US. I stored data in Philippines. And I believe I also did some storage of data in Australia before. So if I actually change this to all-time favorite and click refresh, you should see several reads and writes. So I think it's just because I might have logged in for a long time. That's why it's not showing up anymore. Then the first thing you need to do is go to your environment, create an environment. So There's a default environment, there's a dev environment. So the reason why you need to create an environment is that will create a client and a secret, or a secret. So you need the environment ID and the secret as a way to call the SDKs. So a good example would be if you go back to the getting started guide, then let's say look at the Node.js SDK. This will take you to your GitHub repo, which is very documented properly, and you'll see how you would actually call the APIs. So as you can see here, yeah, you need to provide a client ID and a client secret, and the environment ID, which you created earlier in here. Okay, so once you've done creating the environment, getting the client ID, client secret, it's just more of like just copying this code, and from there you'll be able to leverage in-country data storage functionality. So as you can see here, they support a wide range of capabilities where you can actually store or even use your own keys to encrypt the data. So this is their GitHub again, but let's go to my actual sample app. So here I have a code which is called in-country redoc. In here, I'm saying that this is the environment ID, the client ID, client secret. And from there, I'm actually getting the data from Okta workflows, wherein Okta will pass that data within the body object of the request. And from there, I'm gonna parse the data. As you can see, once I parse the data, I can print the data. Then it's just more of like, how could I store the data? So let me just find it. So in here, as you can see, I'm inside in-country, and I'm able to save the data in a specific country, like this one. This is the code. In-country create. Then from there, I'm just getting all the key PII data, putting them in a big JSON format, or JSON body, and I'm actually storing the JSON body as a citizen data within in-country. So in Okta, what I did was I actually created a group. Let's go with the first one, group. That says if the user is added to the in-country group, then this user should be reducted. And how I trigger the reduction, plus the code I showed earlier, is through events. So what happens is I actually use Okta workflows, and I created an in-country create flow. And what it's doing is actually checking if a user is added to a certain group event in Okta. If the group is equal to in-country, read the user, get all the information, like first name, last name. This is where I'm collecting all the PII data. As you can see, I'm even getting the data sovereignty attribute, country code ID. And from there, once I got them, I'm just parsing them and converting them to a JSON object. And I'm passing that object as inside the body. Then from there, I'm calling the API called in-country create, which I showed earlier, such that the data can be reducted. How I redact the data is actually up to you. But what I did was every time a user gets created in Okta, I'm actually, Okta unique user ID, or GUID, is created as part of the user object. So what I'm doing is that I'm passing the user ID here and using the user ID as the key. Because in country, when you store data in country, it's like a key value pair, KVP. So there's a key, there's a value. So what we do is we use the unique ID that Okta generated as the key, and the value is this JSON object. Then once, let's say this has completed successfully, what I'm doing is I'm just reducting all the data with the Okta unique ID, such that it's harder now to see it. Then the next question will be, okay, I already have created the user, reducted the data. How do I reverse it? So to reverse that, what I did was I actually created a inline hook, which I said earlier, again, using Okta workflows still, wherein this in-country hook is actually triggered whenever the user is doing an authentication. And how we do that in Okta is purely going to the API of page of Okta, select the authorization server, which is in-country. And what I did was I actually created a scope called in-country scope, such that if this scope is present, it means that I should redact all the data. If or unreverse the reduction, unreverse the reduction. If I don't pass the scope, it means that I should not reverse or unreduct the data. So as part of the process, I'm also passing all the claims, as you can see, which are all part of the user profile attribute. And to finalize the integration of the inline hooks, I created a in-country reduct policy rule within Okta, where in every time, whenever someone logs in with an in-country scope, then call that hook such that it can unreduct the data. So again, using Okta workflows, I've actually created a flow that will do the reverse of what I did earlier. Wherein this flow, go back to flow, home, exit anyway. If I go back here, in-country token hook, as you can see, this is the flow wherein it's calling that inline hook capability, passing the whole body, getting the user ID within the body. Then from there, getting also the country code from the user such that we can now retrieve the data that's locally stored on a certain country, because that's how, again, in-country works, wherein it uses a key value pair plus also the country where you actually store that data, such that if you provided a wrong country, it will not be able to retrieve that data, because again, it doesn't match, right? Because whatever you stored in a certain country from the start, that's the only place you can store that data unless you replicate it. But that, again, that defies the reason why you're going with a data localization or data residency provider, right? So here I'm passing the user ID as a key, the country where I actually initially stored it. And from there, it will generate the JSON object which I stored. Then it's just more of like once I got that, I'll get the body or the response, from the JSON object. And this will just be containing all the first name, the last name, the mobile phone, street address, city, state. That's now reverse reducted. Then I'm using the token inline hook commands to patch and to patch the data such that whatever is jarbled can now be read. And I'm returning it back to Okta such that the application can now present the data in a visible or readable format. So rather than again talking about the actual mechanics behind the scenes, let's just do it now. How? So first, let's try first by doing a simple create user operation in Okta. So I'll create a user. Let's just create a base user. So I want to store this in, let's say, in the Philippines, because I'm a Filipino, right? So I'll go with a name called Andres, and the last name would be Andres Bonifacio. The username will be andres.bonifacio at incountry.com. Then I'll set a password. Then I think I misspelled this, Bonifacio. Yeah. So I'll save. So now this user is now created in the CIAM platform. Andres. So if I search for Andres, you should see Andres Bonifacio. Given that I haven't added that user to in-country yet, into the in-country group, the data is still visible. But let's refine the data such that we can add more PII. So a good example of a PII would be, let's say, mobile phone. So let's put a mobile phone, which is 04131123 Then we'll put a city, let's say Makati. The state will be NCR. The address will be, let's say, Glorieta. Ayala Avenue. As a street address. Country code, given I want to store this in the Philippines, I'll just put PH. Let's store additional more data like TFN or tax file number. So there should be a custom attribute which I recently created called tax file number. So like this one, let's put 2222333444555 and data solve attribute of, let's just go with ph solve data store me. Then given I already have enriched data, I'll just click save. As you can see, that's already all the PIIs in place. Now to do everything in action, I'll just add this user to the in-country group. So look closely what will happen, by the way. So before I do that, I wanna view Andres profile. So everything's like still not garbled. Before then, I'm gonna add that Andres now to the in-country group. So what will happen if I add Andres in the in-country group? And if we go back to the workflows side of things, the in-country create flow, if I actually go to the flow history, you should see a new record, which is just run around 7:30 my time. So as you can see, there was a new user which was added, which is Andres, and the group was in country. Hence, if it's in country, get all the data, as you can see. So that's all the PII data. Make that or compose that as a JSON object. Then parse that, then push that as a body, as part of the body object of the HTTP API raw request, which will call my API, which is this one, as you can see. So let's make it larger. So now I've already stored that data inside in country within the PH region. Then last part is just more of reducting the data, wherein I'm actually updating the user profile to contain all the PAI with the Okta unique ID, which is unique for each Okta user object. So if you go back here, say everything, if I refresh this one now, you should see again, first name, last name is no longer visible or readable. The only readable ones are the non-PII data, which could be a username, could be the email, because normally they're no longer PII. Again, then mobile phone, street address, country code, we can leave it as PH. Then all the other data are actually reducted. So once that's done, let's now try see how we can actually view that data in a readable format. So how to read that in a readable format, as I said, we can actually use Okta's auth capability and inline hooks. So here, this is an Okta widget, which I'm hosting in Amazon. As you can see right now, if you look at the widget config, this is containing the base URL, which is my Okta tenant, the client ID, which is an application representation of this widget within my Okta tenant. Then the important one here is the issuer, which contains the auth server, the custom auth server, where my inline hook policy was defined. And lastly, I'm adding in-country as a scope. So let's try first without the in-country scope, right? What does that look like? So if I remove that and update this, so if I try to log in as Andres.Bonifacio, at incountry.com, if I'm able to log in, you can see all the information are still jarbled or reducted, because basically this is just more of us making sure that, okay, given that there's no scope, in-country scope provided, it means that I should not translate or make this data readable such that we can still adhere to data localization, regularization laws from a viewing or a reading format. And if we actually inspect the ID token and access token, as you can see, or ID token specifically, everything's still jarbled, right? So there's nothing to see here because everything can't be like, I can't even understand what does that mean, right? Okay. So let's log out now and add that in-country scope. So I've added the in-country scope. Let's update the widget config. Then let's repeat this again. In-country.com. So with this will call actually the inline hook, which I've also hosted in Okta Workflows. Then what will happen if I'm able to successfully log in? The biggest difference, you'll see all the jarbled data should now be visible. Yep. So as you can see here, full name, haven't even changed it yet because I think I'm picking up in a different claim. But the point is like the data solve attribute is now readable, mobile phone readable, address, city, country code, surname is all readable, even a TFN and even the first name. If we actually inspect the technical details within the JSON web token of the ID token, as you can see, everything is now readable. And this is how Okta, as your CIAM platform, can work with data localization platforms like InCountry to solve data regularization or data localization or data residency requirements. So if we go back to the widget, to the workflow, which is this one, if I go back home, and if we check the token hook, check the flow history, you should be able to see the success. And this is the part wherein I'm passing, I'm calling the certain API as a hook. Then what we're happening is that we're reading the user record that was part inside that first request or first transaction, getting the user ID. Then from there, I'm getting the country code as well because we need to know again where did we actually store that data. So if we compose the JSON body with the key and the country code and pass it to that again API which I created, which is this one, as you can see, this is actually now calling the in-country APIs using Node.js, getting all the data which I stored, which is this one. See? And if we go back again to the hooks, I'm returning that value as a response body. Then I'm just parsing the body and manually getting all the information, patching the ID token, and returning that patch or enriched data back to Okta such that the application now understands or is able to present the data in a readable format. So again, and if you go back to the in-country dashboard, you should see additional read or writes that have transpired. So I think I'm logged out. So let me just log in again. So this will challenge me for an OTP, which is, oops, expired too fast. So if you go back to our in-country dashboard, you should see additional operations that are being now showed in your dashboard. Yep. So if you show here, yep. So you can see there's now 3 writes. So I did 1 write earlier, a 2nd write yesterday, a 1 write, a 2nd write earlier, and a 3rd write, which I did recently. And you can also see how many transactions have been done as well. So in summary, going back to the high-level solution diagram, this is how you use platforms like InCountry integrated with your CIAM platform like Okta to deliver end-to-end solution that allows you to store data in a regularized manner, well, in a localization manner, where you can now store data in a specific country that it will never leave that country. And it can only be accessed also as well in that certain country if you decide to do that in a auth or programmatic approach. And my name again is Jefferson Howe, and I hope you find this Tech Monday or Tech Tuesday sharing session useful, wherein I'm able to handle data residency in your CIAM platform using Okta and InCountry. Thank you once again, and I hope to see you in the next Tech Sharing Monday or Tech Sharing Tuesday session. See ya.